The emergency beacon screamed across the void of space, carrying the desperate plea of the Cathera research vessel Gentle Current. Captain Zelith's forearms trembled as she watched the proximity sensors paint a terrifying picture on her display. The Harvester ships were closing in, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could tear through her peaceful vessel like tissue paper. "Captain, the beacon is transmitting on all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Venth, her gill slits fluttering with anxiety. "Someone has to hear us." Zelith's species had evolved on a water world where the greatest dangers were mild storms and territorial fish. The concept of warfare was something they had only recently learned existed when they joined the Galactic Union 3 cycles ago. Now, faced with the reality of Harvester pirates, their gentle nature felt like a death sentence. The Harvesters were a plague across this sector of space. They took everything, ships, cargo, and worst of all, the crews themselves. Stories spread through the Union about their slave markets and the horrible fates that awaited those captured alive. Zelith's research crew of 37 had volunteered for this mission to study cosmic radiation patterns, not to become victims of the galaxy's most feared pirates. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in the outer system," Sensor Technician Grox announced, his rocky granite physiology making his voice sound like grinding stone. "Multiple contacts moving fast." Zelith felt her heart sink. More Harvesters, probably coming to make sure none of them escaped. The Gentle Current was a research vessel, equipped with sensors and laboratories, not weapons or shields worth mentioning. They might as well be floating in space wearing target markers. "How many?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. Grox's boulder-like head turned toward her, confusion written in the glow of his mineral eyes. "Captain, I'm reading 17 contacts. No, 23. The signatures are strange." "Strange how?" "They're not Harvester designs. In fact, I don't recognize these ships at all. They're broadcasting on a frequency I've never encountered." Venth's webbed fingers danced across her console. "Captain, I'm picking up their transmission. It's a response to our distress call." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Zelith stared at the display, watching as the unknown ships moved with purpose toward their location. "Put it on speakers." Static filled the bridge, followed by a voice speaking in the galactic common tongue, though the accent was unlike anything they had heard before. The tone was firm, almost harsh, but there was something reassuring about its confidence. "Unknown vessel broadcasting distress signal. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your SOS and are moving to assist. Hold your position and prepare for combat support. 24 ships of the 3rd Fleet are en route to your location." The bridge erupted in confused chatter. Humans? None of them had heard of this species before. In the Union, word traveled fast about new members, especially ones with military capabilities. Yet here was an entire fleet of unknowns claiming they were coming to help. "Grox, what can you tell me about these ships?" Zelith demanded. The granite's massive fingers worked his console with surprising delicacy. "Captain, these vessels are massive. The largest ones are easily 3 times the size of a Union battlecruiser, but their design philosophy is completely different from anything in our databases. They appear to be built for one purpose, fighting." Venth looked up from her station, fear and hope warring in her expression. "Captain, should we respond?" Before Zelith could answer, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. The Harvester ships had detected the approaching human fleet and were changing course. Instead of continuing their approach to the Gentle Current, they were moving to intercept the newcomers. "They're going to fight," Grox observed unnecessarily. Zelith watched the display with fascination and terror. The human ships moved in precise formations, their approach calculated and deadly. These weren't the chaotic swarms favored by pirates or the defensive postures of Union peacekeepers. This was something else entirely. Organized, professional, and utterly confident. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Human fleet, this is Captain Zelith of the research vessel Gentle Current. We appreciate your response to our distress call. Please be advised that you are facing Harvester pirates. They are extremely dangerous and well-armed." The response came immediately, and Zelith could hear what sounded like weapon systems charging in the background. "Copy that, Captain Zelith. We're familiar with the Harvester threat in this sector. Recommend you maintain position and let us handle the situation. 3rd Fleet has dealt with pirates before." Something about the way the human said pirates sent a chill through Zelith's nervous system. There was a coldness there, a promise of violence that seemed at odds with their willingness to help strangers. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space like a deadly fireworks display. The harvesters opened with their standard tactic, overwhelming missile barrages designed to cripple a target's engines and weapons. Zealeth had seen the aftermath of such attacks on Union ships. The results were never pretty, but the human ships responded in a way that defied everything the Cathera captain understood about space combat. Instead of taking evasive action or raising defensive barriers, they accelerated directly into the missile swarm. Their point defense systems lit up the void with precisely aimed energy beams that detonated incoming missiles with mechanical efficiency. "Impossible," Grox whispered, his stone features actually showing emotion for the first time Zealeth could remember. No one flies directly into a missile barrage, but the humans did exactly that. As the range closed, their ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The harvester ships, designed for intimidation and overwhelming weaker prey, found themselves facing an enemy that not only refused to be intimidated, but seemed to relish the confrontation. "Captain," Venth called out, her voice filled with awe, "I'm detecting massive power signatures from the human ships. Their weapons output it's beyond anything in Union databases." Zealeth watched as a human vessel, sleek and predatory in design, engaged 3 harvester ships simultaneously. The pirates, confident in their numerical advantage, moved to surround their target. The human ship's response was immediate and devastating. Beams of coherent energy reached out across the void, and where they touched harvester hulls, metal simply ceased to exist. The battle was becoming a slaughter, but not in the way anyone had expected. Captain Zealeth watched in stunned silence as the human fleet tore through the harvester formation, like a school of predatory fish attacking wounded prey. What should have been a desperate last stand by outnumbered defenders had become something else entirely, a demonstration of military power that defied everything she thought she knew about space combat. The largest human ship, a massive vessel that dwarfed even Union battlecruisers, moved with impossible grace for something so large. Its weapons fired in perfect sequence, each shot calculated to inflict maximum damage while conserving energy for the next target. This wasn't the chaotic spray-and-pray tactics of pirates or even the methodical bombardments of Union forces. This was surgical precision applied on a massive scale. "Captain, I'm reading massive internal explosions on the Harvester flagship," Grox reported, his boulder-like features somehow managing to convey amazement. "The humans aren't just destroying the hulls, they're targeting specific systems inside the ships." Venth looked up from her communications console, her gill slits fluttering rapidly with excitement. "The human admiral is requesting permission to board one of the damaged harvester vessels. She says they want to gather intelligence on pirate operations in this sector." Zealeth felt a cold current run through her body. The idea of voluntarily boarding a harvester ship was terrifying enough, but doing so while the battle was still raging seemed insane. Tell them we appreciate their thoroughness." The tactical display showed the remaining harvester ships attempting to break off and flee. These pirates had built their reputation on attacking defenseless merchants and researchers, not fighting actual military forces. Faced with an enemy that seemed to treat their overwhelming firepower as a minor inconvenience, their morale had shattered completely, but the humans weren't letting them escape. 2 of the sleeker human vessels broke formation and began pursuit. Their acceleration was incredible, closing the distance to the fleeing pirates with mechanical inevitability. Zealeth realized she was witnessing something that would become legend in pirate circles, assuming any of these harvesters survived to tell the tale. "Unknown human vessels. This is Captain Zealeth again. The fleeing ships no longer pose a threat to us. You don't need to pursue them." The response came from a different voice this time, younger and somehow more intense than Admiral Chen. "Captain Zealeth, this is Commander Martinez aboard the Retribution. Appreciate the concern, but we can't let these pirates return to their base and warn others about human capabilities. This is about preventing future attacks on innocent civilians." The cold logic of it sent another chill through Zealeth's system. These humans weren't just defending them. They were thinking strategically about threats that might emerge later. It was a level of forward planning that suggested extensive experience with warfare. The pursuit lasted only minutes. The fleeing harvester ships, designed for raiding rather than running, couldn't match the speed of their pursuers. The human ships caught them near the edge of the system and ended the threat with the same clinical efficiency they had shown throughout the engagement. "All harvester vessels neutralized," came Admiral Chen's voice over the communications channel. "Captain Zelith, we're moving to establish a protective perimeter around your vessel. Request permission to conduct a damage assessment and offer assistance." Zelith exchanged glances with her senior officers. First contact with a new species was always a delicate situation, but these circumstances were unprecedented. These humans had just saved their lives and demonstrated military capabilities that surpassed anything in Union space. Refusing their offer of assistance would be both ungrateful and potentially dangerous. "Permission granted, Admiral Chen. We owe you our lives." "No debt necessary, Captain. We were in the area anyway." "In the area anyway?" Zelith wondered what kind of civilization casually deployed fleets of warships to patrol remote sectors of space. The Union maintained a few peacekeeping forces, but nothing like what she had just witnessed. An hour later, Zelith found herself in her ship's main docking bay, waiting to meet the humans face to face. Her science team had worked frantically to establish atmospheric compatibility, only to discover that human requirements were remarkably similar to their own. In fact, humans seemed to prefer conditions that most Union species would consider harsh: higher gravity, more radiation tolerance, and a surprising comfort with temperature variations. When the airlock cycled open, Zelith got her first look at humanity. Admiral Sarah Chen was tall and lean, moving with a predator's grace despite the heavier gravity aboard the Cathera vessel. Her uniform was practical rather than decorative, designed for function rather than ceremony. But it was her eyes that captured Zelith's attention, intelligent, alert, and holding a hardness that spoke of experience with violence. Behind the Admiral came a small team of officers, each carrying equipment that Zelith didn't recognize. Their movements were coordinated and efficient, suggesting extensive training and boarding procedures. These weren't scientists or diplomats. They were soldiers who happened to be capable of conducting first contact. "Captain Zelith," Admiral Chen said, extending a hand in what Zelith recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I'm glad we were able to reach you in time." Zelith carefully touched the human's hand with one of her own, noting the surprising strength in the gesture. "Admiral, I cannot express our gratitude adequately. We thought we were going to die." "The harvesters are a problem we've been tracking for some time," Chen replied, her tone suggesting this was merely business. "We've been conducting operations to eliminate their presence from this sector." "Operations?" Zelith asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Chen's expression didn't change, but Zelith caught something in her eyes. A flicker of something cold and determined. "Pirates prey on the innocent, Captain. In human space, that's considered an unacceptable threat to civilian safety. We deal with such threats permanently." The casual way she said permanently sent another chill through Zelith's nervous system. These humans had just wiped out an entire pirate fleet without apparent effort or remorse. They spoke of warfare and violence with the same tone most Union species use to discuss weather patterns. "Admiral, if you don't mind me asking, how did you receive our distress signal so quickly? This is a remote system, far from any established shipping lanes." Chen smiled, and for the first time her expression seemed genuinely warm. "Captain, your people have a lot to learn about human capabilities. We monitor a very wide area of space for threats to civilian vessels. Your signal was picked up by our deep space sensor network the moment you transmitted it." Zelith realized the implications immediately. These humans had surveillance capabilities that covered vast regions of space, military forces that could respond rapidly to threats anywhere in that region, and the willingness to use overwhelming force against anyone who threatened civilians under their protection. But they weren't part of the Union. They weren't on any diplomatic registry. They were an unknown military power operating in the shadows, and they had just announced their presence by annihilating a pirate fleet. Over the next several hours, as human repair teams worked to fix the minor damage to the gentle current, Captain Zelith found herself in deep conversation with Admiral Chen in the ship's observation lounge. What she learned challenged everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. "You see, Captain," Chen explained, gesturing toward the viewport where human ships maintained their protective formation. "Humanity emerged into space about 50 years ago. We discovered very quickly that the galaxy isn't a particularly friendly place. Zeleth's gill slits fluttered with confusion. 50 years? But that's impossible. The Union has protocols for first contact with emerging species. We would have been notified immediately. Chen's smile held no warmth this time. The Union never found us, Captain. We found them, and what we discovered wasn't particularly encouraging. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of local space. Zeleth recognized Union territory, marked in the familiar blue of peaceful civilization. But surrounding it in various shades of red and orange were regions she had never seen before. These are threat zones, Chen continued, pointing to the red areas. Harvester territory, slaver guild operations, mercenary confederations, and worse. The Union occupies roughly 12% of inhabited space in this galactic arm. The rest belongs to various forms of organized violence. Zeleth stared at the display in shock. But that's not what we were told. The Union represents the majority of civilized space. The Union represents the majority of peaceful civilized space, Chen corrected gently. Unfortunately, peace and civilization aren't the same thing. Most of the galaxy operates under different principles. She manipulated the display to show shipping routes and attack patterns. Your people travel through space assuming that others share your values. That's admirable, but it's also extremely dangerous. Predatory species see peaceful traders and researchers as opportunities, not fellow sentients deserving of respect. The implications hit Zeleth like a physical blow. Her own people had been venturing into space for less than a decade, always under the assumption that the Union's peaceful example was the galactic norm. Now she was learning that they had been incredibly lucky to survive this long. How do you know all this? She asked. Chen's expression grew darker. Because humanity learned these lessons the hard way. Our first contact wasn't with the Union. It was with slavers who saw us as potential merchandise. They attacked our outer colonies, captured thousands of our people, and sold them in markets we didn't even know existed. Zeleth felt sick. The idea of intelligent beings buying and selling each other was horrifying to her water-world sensibilities. What did you do? We adapted, Chen said simply. Humans are remarkably good at adaptation, Captain. It's one of our species' defining characteristics. When we discovered that the galaxy was full of predators, we became better predators. The Admiral stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at her fleet with obvious pride. Every ship in my task force was designed with one purpose: to project force across interstellar distances. Every officer in my command has been trained to think strategically about threats to human civilians. We don't just react to attacks, Captain. We prevent them. Zeleth joined her at the viewport, studying the human vessels with new understanding. Their design philosophy was completely different from Union ships. Where Union vessels emphasized comfort, efficiency, and peaceful research capabilities, human ships were built for war. They were weapons platforms that happened to be capable of traveling between stars. Admiral, are all human ships like these? These are Third Fleet vessels, dedicated military units designed for deep space operations. But even our civilian ships carry defensive systems that would surprise you. We learned early that an undefended ship is a dead ship in most of galactic space. Chen turned to face Zeleth directly. Captain, I need to ask you something important. How much does the Union leadership know about the real situation out here? Zeleth considered the question carefully. I think they know very little. Our diplomatic corps tends to focus on peaceful contact with like-minded species. If they were aware of the level of danger you're describing, surely they would have warned us. Or they would have advised you to stay home, Chen observed. The Union seems to prefer avoiding problems rather than solving them. It was a harsh assessment, but Zeleth couldn't argue with it. Union policy did emphasize caution and non-interference. The idea of actively hunting down pirates and slavers would be considered barbarically aggressive by most Union species. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Chen's smile returned, but this time it was calculating rather than warm. I'm suggesting that it might be time for the Union to learn about the reality of galactic politics. And I'm suggesting that humanity might be willing to share some hard-earned wisdom about survival in a hostile universe. Before Zeleth could respond, Chen's communication device chimed. She listened to the message with growing intensity, her expression shifting from professional calm to something much more dangerous. Captain, I'm afraid our conversation will have to continue later. We've just received intelligence about a major harvester operation planned for this sector. It seems our little skirmish here was just the advance guard. Zeleth felt her heart's racing. How major? 50 ships, possibly more. They're planning to hit the Union research station at Kepler 442b in 72 hours. According to our intelligence, they're expecting minimal resistance and maximum profit from the scientists and equipment there. The Kepler 442b station was home to nearly 2,000 researchers from 16 different Union species. It was one of the largest scientific installations in Union space and completely defenseless against military attack. Admiral, we have to warn them. We will, Captain. But we're also going to do something the Union has never tried. We're going to end this threat permanently. Chen activated her communicator and began issuing orders in rapid, clipped sentences. Around them, Zelith could see human crew members moving with renewed urgency. The casual efficiency she had observed during the earlier battle was shifting into something more intense. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have a priority target package. Harvester main fleet. 50-plus vessels planning assault on Union civilian installation. Mission parameters are search and destroy. No survivors, no escape. Zelith listened in growing amazement as Chen outlined a plan that was both audacious and terrifying. The humans weren't planning to defend the research station. They were planning to hunt down the Harvester fleet and destroy it before it could attack. Admiral, she ventured, shouldn't we coordinate with Union defense forces? Chen paused in her planning and looked at Zelith with something that might have been pity. Captain, what Union defense forces? According to our intelligence, the nearest Union military vessel is 6 days away and equipped with sensors designed for scientific research, not combat. The reality of Union weakness hit Zelith like cold water. Her people had been living in a bubble of peaceful civilization, protected by distance and luck rather than strength. Now that bubble was about to burst, and they were completely unprepared for what lay beyond it. What can we do to help? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Chen's expression softened slightly. You can do exactly what you're doing, Captain. You can learn, and when this is over, you can help us teach the Union what it needs to know about surviving in the real galaxy. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a pack of hunting wolves, their formation tight and purposeful. Captain Zelith watched from the bridge of the gentle current, which had been integrated into the fleet's protective formation, despite her protests that they should return to Union space. Your ship has the most advanced sensors in the fleet, Admiral Chen had explained. We need your detection capabilities to track the Harvester movements accurately. It was a polite way of saying they needed her ship's peaceful scientific equipment to hunt down and kill pirates. The irony wasn't lost on Zelith, but she found herself strangely willing to participate. The alternative, allowing 2,000 researchers to face the fate that nearly befell her crew, was unthinkable. Commander Martinez had transferred to the gentle current to serve as military liaison, and Zelith found the young human officer to be both fascinating and terrifying. Where Admiral Chen maintained a professional demeanor that barely concealed her predatory nature, Martinez seemed to genuinely enjoy the prospect of combat. Captain, you need to understand something about the Harvesters, Martinez explained as they reviewed tactical data. They're not just pirates. They're a cancer that spreads through civilized space. Every ship they take, every crew they capture, every successful raid makes them stronger and bolder. Zelith studied the intelligence reports with growing horror. The Harvesters didn't just steal cargo. They enslaved entire crews, sold children to alien collectors, and used captured ships to expand their fleet. They were a plague that fed on the peaceful nature of species like her own. How do you know so much about them? She asked. Martinez's expression grew dark. Because they took my sister's ship 3 years ago. The Helena was a deep space explorer, completely unarmed, carrying a crew of 47 researchers and diplomats. The Harvesters hit them near the edge of Union space and vanished before anyone could respond. I'm sorry, Zelith said quietly. Don't be sorry, Captain. Be angry. My sister and her crew spent 2 years in Harvester slave markets before we could track them down and mount a rescue operation. By the time we found them, only 12 were still alive. And what we learned from them about Harvester operations has been invaluable for planning missions like this one. The casual way Martinez spoke about mounting rescue operations deep in hostile territory struck Zelith as almost incomprehensible. Her people would have filed diplomatic protests and hoped for eventual negotiations. The humans had simply decided that their people were coming home, regardless of how many pirates had to die to make that happen. Commander, how many operations like this has humanity conducted? Martinez consulted his datapad briefly. This will be the 47th major anti-piracy operation in the last 2 years. We've eliminated 6 major harvester fleets, 4 slaver guild outposts, and approximately 300 individual raiders. We estimate we've freed over 8,000 captured civilians from various species. Zealith felt dizzy. The humans had been conducting a private war against galactic piracy for years, and the Union had never even known they existed. How is that possible? Why haven't you contacted the Union officially? She asked. Martinez shrugged. Political complications. The Union leadership tends to prefer negotiation and peaceful resolution. They're not comfortable with the methods necessary to eliminate threats like the harvesters. Admiral Chen decided it was better to handle the problem quietly, rather than force Union politicians to make difficult decisions. The implications were staggering. Humanity had appointed itself as the unofficial police force for a region of space that included Union territory, and they had been protecting Union civilians without asking for permission or recognition. It was simultaneously admirable and terrifying. Contact. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Grox from his sensor station. Configuration matches harvester fleet composition. Martinez was instantly alert, his casual demeanor replaced by focused intensity. How many ships, Grox? Counting. 53 confirmed contacts. Range approximately 4 light minutes and closing. Martinez activated his communicator. Admiral, we have the target fleet. 53 ships right where intelligence predicted. Chen's voice came back immediately. Excellent work, Commander. All ships prepare for combat. This is a maximum threat engagement. Assume all harvester vessels are armed and dangerous. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. No quarter asked or given. Zealith felt a chill at the cold finality in Chen's voice. This wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be an execution. The human fleet deployed from hyperspace with mechanical precision. Instead of the loose formations favored by most military forces, they arranged themselves in overlapping fields of fire that would allow maximum coordination. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon system was calibrated for optimal effect. The harvesters, confident in their numerical superiority and expecting to face defenseless researchers, walked directly into the trap. Admiral Chen to all ships, commence Operation Thunderstrike. Priority targets are command vessels and anything capable of hyperspace escape. We end this threat today. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Zealith's experience. Where the earlier skirmish had been swift and decisive, this engagement was a masterclass in military strategy applied on a massive scale. The humans didn't just attack the harvester fleet, they dissected it with surgical precision. The largest human vessels engaged the harvester command ships while smaller, faster units swept the flanks to prevent escape. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. The pirates found themselves fighting an enemy that had studied their tactics, anticipated their responses, and prepared counters for every possible action. Captain, the coordination is incredible, Grox observed, his rocky features actually showing emotion. They're fighting as a single organism, not as individual ships. Martinez smiled grimly. Human military doctrine emphasizes integrated operations. Every ship is part of a larger system. Every captain trained to support the overall mission rather than seeking individual glory. On the display, Zealith watched as harvester ships died in rapid succession. Their weapons, designed to overwhelm civilian vessels, barely scratched the armor of human warships. Their tactics, developed for raiding defenseless prey, were useless against an enemy that fought back with professional competence. But what struck Zealith most was the complete absence of mercy. When harvester ships attempted to surrender, the humans ignored the signals and continued firing. When pirates tried to abandon ship, human point defense systems eliminated their escape pods. This wasn't just a military victory. It was the complete elimination of an enemy force. Commander, Zealith asked quietly, are you taking any prisoners? Martinez's expression was stone-cold serious. Captain, these pirates have enslaved thousands of innocents, murdered countless civilians, and terrorized peaceful shipping for decades. Every one of them that survives is a threat to future victims. Humanity learned long ago that some enemies can't be reformed or negotiated with. They can only be stopped. Within 2 hours, the entire harvester fleet, had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Not a single pirate ship escaped. Not a single raider survived to warn their bases about human capabilities. It was the most thorough military victory Zalith had ever witnessed, and also the most coldly efficient killing she had ever seen. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Thunderstrike is complete. Total enemy casualties: 53 ships destroyed, estimated 4,000 raiders eliminated. Our casualties: minor damage to 3 vessels, no personnel losses. Well done, everyone! As the human fleet began recovery operations, Zalith realized that everything in the galaxy had just changed. Humanity had announced its presence not with diplomatic messages or peaceful contact, but with the complete destruction of one of the most feared pirate fleets in known space. And they had done it to protect Union civilians, who didn't even know they existed. 3 weeks after the destruction of the Harvester fleet, Captain Zalith found herself in the most surreal situation of her career. She was sitting in the Union Council chambers on Centauri Prime, facing the assembled representatives of 47 species, trying to explain how humanity had quietly been protecting Union space without anyone's knowledge. The reaction had been mixed. "You expect us to believe," demanded Councillor Vrix of the Hegemony Worlds, his insectoid features clicking with agitation, "that an unknown species has been conducting military operations in our territory for years, without our detection." Admiral Chen, who had accepted the invitation to address the Council despite obvious reservations, maintained her professional composure. "Counselor, with respect, our operations have been conducted in areas where Union presence was minimal or non-existent. We were protecting shipping lanes and civilian installations that your forces couldn't adequately defend." The chamber erupted in angry buzzing, chirping, and other forms of indignation. The idea that Union forces were inadequate for defending Union space was apparently considered insulting by most of the representatives. Councillor Thex of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle for attention. "Admiral Chen, while we appreciate your assistance, the Union cannot officially sanction unauthorized military operations in our space. There are protocols for this sort of thing." Chen's smile was polite but held no warmth. "Counselor, your protocols require formal diplomatic contact, followed by lengthy negotiations, committee reviews, and eventual approval by majority vote. According to our analysis, that process takes an average of 14 months to complete. The Harvester fleet we eliminated would have killed approximately 12,000 civilians during that time period." Zalith watched the exchange with growing frustration. The humans had risked their lives to save Union civilians, and the Council was treating them like criminals for not filing proper paperwork first. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "our intelligence indicates that formal Union military response to the Harvester threat would have been inadequate. The nearest Union naval vessel capable of engaging 53 hostile ships is currently 6 months away from the target area." The uncomfortable silence that followed this statement spoke volumes about Union military capabilities, or the lack thereof. Counselor, Dramek of the Silicon Coalition attempted to change the subject. "Admiral, you claim to have freed thousands of enslaved civilians from various species. Do you have documentation to support these claims?" Chen nodded to Commander Martinez, who activated a holographic display showing before and after images of rescued civilians. The images were disturbing, showing healthy individuals transformed into broken, traumatized survivors of systematic abuse. But they were also proof of successful rescue operations that the Union would never have attempted. "These are just the survivors we've been able to identify," Martinez explained. "Many victims were too traumatized to provide information about their origins. We've established rehabilitation centers on 3 human worlds specifically to help former slaves recover and, when possible, return to their home systems." Zalith had visited one of these centers during her stay in human space. The level of care and resources devoted to helping victims of piracy and slavery was extraordinary. The humans seemed to consider the welfare of rescued civilians a personal responsibility rather than a bureaucratic problem. "The real question," Chen said, cutting through the political maneuvering, "is what the Union plans to do now that you're aware of the true situation in galactic space." She manipulated the holographic display to show the threat assessment that had shocked Zalith weeks earlier. The Union territories, marked in peaceful blue, seemed tiny and vulnerable, surrounded by the vast red zones of organized hostility. Your current defensive strategy appears to be based on the assumption that most of galactic civilization shares your peaceful values. Our experience suggests that assumption is dangerously naive. The insult was carefully phrased but unmistakable. Several council members began vocal protests, but Chen continued without pause. The harvesters we eliminated were planning to attack your research station at Kepler 442b. 2,000 civilian researchers would have been killed or enslaved. Your defensive protocols would have resulted in a formal protest being filed approximately 6 weeks after the attack. Councillor Vrix's mandibles clicked angrily. You cannot know that. Union defense forces would have responded appropriately. With what ships? Chen asked bluntly. Your nearest military vessel is a scientific survey ship with defensive weapons designed to discourage wildlife, not engage hostile warships. Your response doctrine prioritizes avoiding conflict over protecting civilians. The harsh truth of it silenced the chamber. Zealoth realized that the humans had forced the Union to confront a reality that most council members had never wanted to acknowledge. They were completely unprepared for a galaxy that didn't share their values. What are you proposing, Admiral? Asked Councillor Thex, her voice carefully neutral. Cooperation, Chen replied simply. Humanity has developed capabilities that complement Union strengths. You excel at scientific research, diplomatic contact, and peaceful development. We excel at threat assessment, military operations, and protective services. Together, we could create a partnership that benefits both our peoples. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as council members consulted with their advisors. Zealoth could see the political calculations taking place. The Union needed protection, but accepting it from humanity would mean acknowledging their own weakness. Finally, Elder Councillor Zephyr of the Ethereal Collective spoke. As the oldest member of the council and representative of one of the founding species, his words carried enormous weight. Admiral Chen, your proposal has merit, but it raises difficult questions. If we acknowledge humanity as a partner in Union security, we are essentially admitting that our peaceful philosophy is insufficient for survival. That admission would fundamentally change the nature of the Union itself. Chen nodded respectfully. Elder Counselor, with respect, the nature of the Union is already changing. The galaxy doesn't care about your philosophical preferences. Predatory species will continue to view Union civilians as prey, regardless of your diplomatic principles. The only question is whether you'll adapt to reality or continue pretending that good intentions are sufficient protection. The blunt assessment sent another wave of uncomfortable murmurs through the chamber. Humans, Zealoth was learning, had little patience for political delicacy when civilian lives were at stake. However, Chen continued, humanity is not asking the Union to abandon its values. We're offering to handle the ugly necessities that your values prevent you from addressing yourselves. You can maintain your commitment to peace and diplomacy while we ensure that commitment doesn't result in your extinction. It was, Zealoth realized, a brilliant proposal. The humans would serve as the Union's unofficial military arm, handling threats that peaceful species couldn't address while allowing Union members to maintain their moral purity. It was a solution that satisfied both practical and philosophical needs, but it also meant that the Union would become dependent on humanity for its survival. And Zealoth was beginning to understand that humans were not a species that anyone wanted to become dependent on. They were protective of those they considered allies, but their protection came with expectations and obligations that peaceful species might find uncomfortable. The debate continued for hours, but Zealoth could see the inevitable conclusion approaching. The Union needed humanity more than humanity needed the Union. The only question was whether the Council would acknowledge that reality before more civilian ships sent out distress calls that only human fleets could answer. 6 months after the Harvester fleet's destruction, Captain Zealoth stood on the bridge of the Gentle Current as it emerged from hyperspace near the edge of what had once been considered unsafe territory. The difference was immediately obvious. Where there had once been the constant threat of pirate attacks, there was now an eerie calm that spoke of systematic threat elimination. Captain, I'm detecting the beacon signals from the new monitoring stations, reported Venth from her communications post. All green across the board. The monitoring stations were one of the more visible signs of the partnership that had emerged from the difficult negotiations on Centauri Prime. Human sensor networks now provided early warning coverage for Union shipping lanes, while Union scientific expertise helped improve the detection capabilities of those same networks. It had been a difficult 6 months for everyone involved. The Council had eventually voted to accept what they called the Mutual Defense Cooperation Agreement with humanity. The vote had been close, 24 in favor, 21 opposed, with 2 abstentions, but it had passed. The Union would maintain its commitment to peaceful exploration and diplomatic contact, while humanity would handle what the official documents carefully termed security challenges. In practice, this meant that human fleets now patrolled shipping lanes that had been too dangerous for Union vessels, while Union diplomatic corps worked to establish formal relationships with species that humanity had contacted through somewhat more direct methods. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Chen," Venth announced. The human admiral appeared on the main screen, looking exactly as composed and professional as she had during their first meeting. Behind her, Zealith could see the bridge of the Retribution, now serving as flagship for Joint Operations Command. "Captain Zealith, welcome to Sector 727 Alpha. How are your new defensive systems performing?" Zealith glanced at the status displays showing the upgraded shields and point defense systems that human engineers had installed on the Gentle Current. The modifications had been carefully designed to enhance defensive capabilities without compromising the vessel's scientific mission, but they had fundamentally changed the nature of Cathera space exploration. "All systems nominal, Admiral, though I have to admit, it feels strange commanding a research vessel that could probably defeat a pirate frigate in single combat." Chen's smile was genuinely warm this time. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Captain. Better to have defensive capabilities you don't need than to need them and not have them." It was a very human philosophy, Zealith had learned. Where her people preferred to avoid danger entirely, humans preferred to be prepared for it. The difference in approach had led to some interesting cultural exchanges over the past few months. "Any new developments in the sector?" Zealith asked. "Actually, yes. We've received intelligence about a new threat, something called the Void Syndicate. They're apparently a more sophisticated organization than the Harvesters, with better ships and more strategic thinking." Zealith felt the familiar chill that came with news of new dangers. "How sophisticated?" "Sophisticated enough to have noticed our anti-piracy operations and decided that humanity represents a threat to their business model. We're expecting them to make some kind of move in the near future." The casual way Chen discussed the prospect of facing a more dangerous enemy was typically human, where Zealith's people would have immediately begun considering diplomatic solutions or strategic withdrawal. The humans seemed almost eager for the challenge. "What kind of move?" Zealith asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. "Probably an attack on one of our joint facilities or a Union target under our protection. They'll want to test our resolve and capabilities before committing to a larger confrontation." Commander Martinez appeared on the screen beside Chen. "Captain Zealith, we've been analyzing Void Syndicate tactics, and they're significantly more advanced than typical pirates. They use coordinated fleet actions, strategic planning, and sophisticated intelligence gathering. This won't be like our previous engagements." Zealith understood the implication. The Harvesters had been dangerous but predictable, pirates who relied on overwhelming force against defenseless targets. The Void Syndicate sounded like an actual military organization with professional capabilities. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "Your ship's sensor capabilities are still the best in the joint fleet," Chen replied. "We'd like you to join the task force we're assembling to hunt down Syndicate advance scouts. Your ability to detect cloaked vessels could be crucial." The request was perfectly reasonable, but it represented another step in Zealith's transformation from peaceful researcher to reluctant participant in galactic warfare. 6 months ago, the idea of actively hunting enemy scouts would have been unthinkable. Now it seemed like a natural extension of her responsibilities. "Understood, Admiral. The Gentle Current is at your disposal." "Excellent. But Captain, there's something else you should know. The Union Council has been receiving diplomatic inquiries from several other species who have become aware of our operations. Some are potential allies interested in similar arrangements. Others are less friendly." Zealith felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. "What kind of inquiries?" Martinez answered this time, his expression serious. "The Hegemony Coalition has formally protested our unauthorized military activities in their border regions. They're claiming that human anti-piracy operations violate their territorial sovereignty. But we're protecting their shipping too," Zalith protested. Yes, but we're doing it without their permission. Some species seem to prefer the predictable danger of pirates to the uncertainty of human protection. It was a depressingly familiar pattern. Throughout history, Zalith had learned, there had always been those who preferred known problems to unknown solutions. The Hegemony Coalition apparently fell into that category. More significantly, Chen continued, we've been contacted by something calling itself the Crimson Dominion. They claim that our interference with traditional commerce, their term for piracy and slavery, violates ancient agreements about territorial boundaries. Ancient agreements? Zalith asked. Apparently, there's a whole diplomatic framework governing relationships between predatory and peaceful species that the Union was never informed about. The basic principle seems to be that aggressive species have the right to prey on peaceful ones as long as they follow certain unwritten rules. The implications were staggering. There was an entire shadow diplomacy governing galactic relationships that operated on principles completely opposite to Union values. Worse, this shadow system apparently considered human intervention a violation of established order. Admiral, what does this mean for the partnership? Chen's expression grew cold and determined. It means that humanity's decision to protect Union civilians has put us on a collision course with forces we're only beginning to understand. The Void Syndicate, the Hegemony Coalition, the Crimson Dominion. They're all part of a system that profits from violence and exploitation. And now we're threatening that system, Zalith observed. Exactly, which means this conflict is going to get much larger and more dangerous than we initially anticipated. Martinez leaned forward. Captain, the Union Council needs to understand something crucial. This isn't just about pirates anymore. By accepting human protection, the Union has inadvertently declared war on a galactic order that most of its members never knew existed. Zalith stared at the human officers on her screen, realizing that her rescue by the Third Fleet had triggered something much larger than anyone had anticipated. Humanity had stepped onto a galactic stage dominated by predators and announced their intention to change the rules. The response was going to be swift, coordinated, and potentially overwhelming. But as she looked at Chen's determined expression and Martinez's confident bearing, Zalith found herself oddly reassured. Humanity had evolved on a world that apparently produced natural warriors, and they had chosen to use their abilities to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone finally said no to its ancient systems of exploitation. And Zalith realized that she was proud to be part of that resistance, even if she had never asked for the role. Admiral, the gentle current stands ready for whatever comes next. Chen smiled, and for the first time since their initial meeting, it was a smile that promised hope rather than violence. Thank you, Captain. Together I think we're going to change everything.